Hello, my name is Russell Myers, Independent U.S. President for 2024. So let me make some heads explode here. All right, so during the 2020 campaign cycle, Andrew Yang garnered a lot of attention for suggesting utilizing a universal basic income, or UBI for short. His proposal met with mixed responses for good reason. His proposal was for dispersing federal funding truly universally, regardless of income level. This met with resentment from those at the lower end of the income spectrum, because it would mean the wealthy would be receiving an equal amount to the poor. That's actually quite understandable for those on lower incomes to be negative about. It's no surprise that many at the higher end of the income scale objected to the idea, since they directly benefit from exploiting people at the lower end of the income scale. I am going to state that I fully agree with the concept that UBI should not be universal. Instead, it should be incremental and based upon annual or even quarterly income. Quarterly would most likely be more appropriate. Just because you had a certain income the previous year does not mean you have the same income at this time. In fact, you could have made an extremely good income early last year, then got laid off in the middle of last year. If you're applying for, if you're talking about a UBI, or any kind of social support this year, your resources could already be exhausted. The first thing that we should do is define what is meant by a basic income. Basic income, as the name implies, is a consistent, predictable income high enough to provide for basic living necessities: food, clothing, shelter, utilities, and at least help pay for basic medical care. One should note that none of the test runs that have been done previously have provided enough for all of that. What Andrew Yang had suggested at the amount he suggested was not a basic income, but a supplemental income. There have been numerous test runs of a UBI, and the arguments against it have all been proven false at every turn, such as the claim that people who receive a UBI will not want to work. This has been proven incorrect with each and every test run. The only exceptions being during the pandemic, in which case it was not that recipients did not want to work, it was that they did not want to place themselves and their families at risk. Aside from during the pandemic, what was found was that the vast majority of recipients worked more. Other claims involved recipients using more drugs or drinking more. Again, this was proven false. Drug use remained constant, just as drug use remains constant across all income levels at this time. If anything, drug and alcohol use increased during times of economic downturn. So, in these tests, alcohol use actually declined on average. Complaints of anxiety and depression, hence use of psychiatric medications, declined concurrently, though this is something else which is not always income dependent. Health improved, blood pressure decreased, expression of life satisfaction increased. Recipients had more time to spend with friends and family rather than working multiple jobs or extreme amounts of overtime. Debt decreased, savings increased. None of the test runs were long enough to give a truly clear picture of long-term benefits. However, some things can be projected very easily. With long-term UBI, we could project increased educational efforts, even more health improvement, and more entrepreneurship. In other words, more people starting their own small businesses. In addition, none of the test runs were expansive enough to accurately measure the effects on the general economy of a given area. We can easily project from results of what we have seen from programs such as Social Security and even the rescue checks set out during the pandemic. We can use the opposing data from many decades in many countries, which illustrate what happens when basic needs are met versus when they are not met. When basic needs are met on a large scale in any given area, education increases, crime decreases, business revenue increases, employment increases, tax revenue increases, which funds schools, roads, libraries, social services, etc. Property values stabilize or increase. Health improves, and a compassion at a communal level increases as indicated by increased charitable contributions and more people doing volunteer work. Think of it this way. How many times have you considered doing volunteer work but rejected the idea because you were too fatigued from working to maintain your own basic living? Have you ever felt anxiety and depression because of long-term financial stress and all that was involved in either dealing with it or trying to climb out of debt? How many times have you thought donating money to a charitable cause, but could not spare the money? When basic needs are not met, violent crime, property crime, drug use, and alcoholism increase. Suicide rates skyrocket, businesses suffer, property values decline, tax revenues fall, education is underfunded, schools deteriorate, social services at the local level are cut drastically, entire communities deteriorate. Small communities may suffer so badly that they become ghost towns as residents are forced to pick up and move away in search of employment. Small businesses close because the community does not generate enough revenue to cover business expenses. That covers the potential highly predictable benefits. Let's get into the mechanics of it. One unfortunate thing about many presentations of a UBI is that it has been simplified far too much. An incremental basic income would be a complex undertaking, and we cannot shy away from that fact. How much should it be? That part is up for debate and study. While a basic income of $2,000 a month would be a generous living income in some states that have low cost of living, in states like New York or California, $2,000 a month is a poverty wage. So implementing such a program would require a calculation of average living expenses for a given area to include all basic needs for an individual and a family. Another aspect of this is that this should include stipends not only for adults but for dependent children as well. I will use some arbitrary numbers here. When I state an incremental basic income, what I mean is a stipend based upon current income. As income levels increase, the stipend decreases. Let's say the stipend would begin at $0 income, where a person would receive $2,000 a month. Remember, this is just an example. Each single citizen would receive $2,000 a month up to an income other than, well, never mind. It's not, okay, up to an income of maybe $60,000 a year, which should be prorated quarterly. At above $60,000, the IBI decreases to $1,500 a month. At $80,000, it reduces to $1,000 and would stop entirely at $100,000. Obviously, unlike historic social support programs like food stamps, the income levels where the assistance decreased and then ceased would not be at points where the intent is keeping some people in poverty. The absolute opposite would be true. Let me clarify here that I do mean this would be based on income, not wages. A person may not have any wages at all, but have an income of $60,000 a year or more from other sources, such as capital gains. I am not including other issues for now which would have to be considered and complicate the calculations further, such as liquid and investment assets. These considerations would definitely be considered after a broad examination was completed. It would also require considering household income, as one household member may not have an income at all, while the household income as a whole may be in the millions. Complications. One of the arguments against UBI was that it would lead to inflation. Actually, no, it would not. People having more income does not lead to inflation. What causes inflation is capitalists exploiting the fact that incomes increase in a given area. This is the same thing which leads to phenomena such as gentrification. Take a poor neighborhood, then an employer moves in that offers higher wages than has been normal for that area. Landlords suddenly increase rent, driving out tenants that have lived there for decades so that the landlords can do maintenance and renovations that they have refused to do previously. Then bring in new tenants at much higher rent. Stores increase their prices, etc. For this reason, an IBI would have to be only part of a collection of policies which prevent such price gouging. Rent freezes for ongoing tenants, strong tenant representation, price caps to prevent excessive increases on basic needs. Such price caps should not be solid numbers, but based on profit revenue percentages to avoid unfair stress on small businesses for the reasons in the next paragraph. Here is an irony to consider. If an IBI were implemented, then employers who offer low wages would be forced to pay higher wages. At the higher end of that scale, it would mean that fewer people would qualify or would qualify only for lower amounts of the IBI stipend. Of course, we could expect some organic inflation for this reason. But if done in a rational manner, that inflation would not exceed the income benefits realized. The IBI could also be adjusted for inflation. This proposal would include people on fixed incomes such as Social Security, pensions, etc. An IBI is not intended to fully replace such other social support programs as food stamps and housing assistance immediately. However, it could very well decrease the amount needed for those programs, so somewhat balancing out. An extensive examination is necessary. Now, I am not suggesting that this particular proposal should be implemented nationally on an immediate basis. So, what I propose would be several large-scale and long-term test instances to gather data and refine the concept before taking it national. This may include a number of large cities or even states. For the best outcome, these cities or states should be ones that have consistently low income levels. The test period should be at least 2 years and preferably 4 years. This would allow long-term data to realize results such as the effect on adult education, up to allowing many adults to fully or nearly complete 4-year degree programs. If that happened, we could continue assessing data in the aftermath on employment and income. It would be useless to test this concept on areas which have a consistently high income level, as the results would be diluted by the existing income average. To be eligible, a person would have to be a resident of that area for at least 2 years prior to the beginning of the test, excuse me, proven by residency records such as utility bills, mortgage records, student records, and lease agreements. The test should be dynamic with the ability to adapt according to ongoing data results. Because of the residency requirement, test areas would not be announced until shortly before the test began. New residents would not be eligible to avoid skewing test results from people moving in from other areas to claim the benefits. Choosing a test population other than geographic would not give an accurate picture of the data for collection. Residents within the test geographic area who did not qualify for IBI at the beginning of the test but saw decreased incomes during the test period would be eligible so as to assess the program as described. Likewise, if a person's income went up, they would to certain levels, they would be only eligible for lower benefit levels or become ineligible for the program. The goal of this is to improve income equity, general prosperity, and help small businesses. This holds the potential to be especially helpful to women and minorities who tend to most often be on the lower end of the income scale while suffering the social, emotional, and health complications inherent to having a lower income. A side note is that while there is no historical data to support it, it would not surprise me to see an initial minor and short-lived increase in the crime rate in test areas. Parts of this would be because some criminal elements would try and take advantage of the situation in different ways. Domestic abusers would panic as their victims gain the ability to exit the abusive situation. It's also possible municipal police departments would increase arrests on minor offenses and outstanding fines, trying to increase the amount defendants owed, and seize as much of the increased income as possible. That would exhaust itself rather quickly. After the initial rise, any increase in crime would level off and then decrease dramatically. This is predictable. Please share this article or video. Talk about these subjects. If you can afford it, please donate whatever you can to help expand my campaign. This is a true grassroots campaign which needs your help in any way you can offer. So I appreciate anything that you can offer, whether it's sharing my articles or videos, talking about my campaign, or donating money, etc. Any help you can offer, I appreciate. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a good day.